recording of the Manx fishing industry by Mr. Ned and Mr. Jack Maddrell of Glen, Port St Mary, on January the 12th, 1954, with anecdotes about the fishing industry going to Lerwick and the Shetland Isles by two of the last skippers of the herring boats that went from Port St Mary to the Kinsale fishing. But how many boats would there be going to Kinsale at that time?
Oh, there'll be about 60 or 70, and when I started.
Wouldn't be more than that.
No, I don't think so. There's lots of them sold.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, lots of them sold.
Although the word Port St Mary is used, that included Port Erin, Castletown, as well as Port St Mary.
Yes, all CTs, you see.
Castletown was the customers, where the boats were registered at the CT.
Aye. But the boats all came from the different places?
Yes. And that includes the Port St Mary fleet, includes the whole lot. Well, they were laid up either in Derby, Heron, Castletown, Port St Mary, and in days gone by, some of them was laid up actually in Port Erin.
There wasn't room in Port St Mary to take a lot, you know?
No, not when there was a big fleet. I've actually beached laid a boat up in Derby, Heron for the winter. I was in a boat that was laid up there. Well then, while the boat was laid up in the winter time, the skipper and the first hand usually seen to the gear, that is the mending or making of the nets. The nets was woven in a factory in Port St Mary. There was two in it, as a matter of fact. And then, of course, after they were woven, they were mounted by the fisherman who was skipper of the boat and his assistant. Well, after about the beginning of March, the boats were hauled off the beach, and we started to get ready to put the gear aboard and paint them up and clean them and all the rest of it for the going for the fishing. So that's about all that we can say about that part of it. Now I'll relate my part when I started. I was a bit older than a good many when they went as cooks, because I would be about 14, now over 14 when I went as a cook, but there were some of them going from the age of 12. Yes, as cooks. Yes. Well, about the end of March, we left Port St Mary in a boat called the Mona, CT 117. We were bound for Crookhaven in the south of Ireland. Crookhaven is a small harbour about 6.5 miles northwest of the Fastnet Lighthouse. Well, after we left Port St Mary, it was a custom for all of the most of the men, when they got out round the point, for to take off their caps and sit down and say a few words of silent prayer. Well then, the watch was set, and of course, carry on until you got to your destination. Well, after you got to your destination, there was some little things to do to make ready for the fishing. And then the next thing was, of course, to get a suitable day for to start with the nets, because the nets sometimes would be dry and sometimes wet, but it wasn't advisable for to shoot the nets, that is to cast them overboard. When the nets was dry, you were have to foul the rope. Mackerel nets was mounted with cork on the top and a rope underneath for to keep them spread, to keep the mesh open. And
so they haul the boat up to
them. Each boat, the most of the boats, had a small steam engine for to haul this rope. And it was the boy's job, or the cook, as you call them, for to coil the rope, which was 2 miles long. And it wasn't a very nice job turning out for a boy of from 12 to 14 years of age, turning out at midnight, which was the time that's always set to start the whole the nets. It wasn't a very nice job for him turning out of a hot bunk, but it would have coiled 2 miles of a rope. But that was his duty. Well, when there would be about half of the gear in, there was one man looking after the boiler to keep the steam up for the engine. Mm-hmm. That man would be providing the kettle for a feed, for a meal of some sort. It wouldn't be a
cup of tea or coffee.
It would be either a coffee, cocoa or tea or whatever it was. And that was that would come about when there was half of the gear in, which they called half scarf. So the next thing then, of course, you'd carry on. You didn't spend any more time at that than was necessary, and you went on deck and started again with the hauling of the gear. And you usually had the nets if everything was favourable. It took about 4 hours to haul the gear in. And as I said from the first, I was the boy, and I'm relating my experience. The boy then was allowed to turn into his bunk again, and he would be called out about 8 o'clock to prepare the breakfast. That is, to clean the fish, the mackerel, and get the breakfast ready for the men, and to change the watch. If it took longer than that to get in, which it usually did if the weather was calm. Well, that was the procedure pretty well as far as the boy was concerned. Well, I had, about 2 or 3 years later, I went as a full shearman. And it was just the same thing, of course, all that time, ups and downs and hard sails and soft sails. Well, that went on till about the month of June, when the mackerel, there wasn't much demand for mackerel, and of course you finished up then and came home to Portsmouth Mary again to prepare for the herring fishing. And in doing that, you put a herring gear aboard. That is a fleet of herring nets. Now the mackerel fleet, as they call it, or we call it a train, was about 52 nets. That was the average of 100-yard nets. That was 100 yards, wasn't it? Before they were off the machine, before they were slung.
About 34 or 35 for them when they were slung to the rope, when they were roped.
Yeah. Well then, the herring nets wasn't nearly so long. That was there were about 21 nets of the same length, slung pretty well on the same line. But the difference with the herring nets and the mackerel nets was that the herring nets was floated below the surface to whatever length you required, and they were floated by skin buoys or cork or barrels or whatever the floats might be, with the same process of a rope underneath which served to haul the nets back again. And that was how the thing went on. Well, after, as I say, we went to after the boat was got ready and the gear changed and everything, we started off to Shetland. And of course it took the best part of a week to go there, because it's a good long way from the Isle of Man, and the weather was not, the wind's not always favourable, because there was no propeller. There was nothing but to push the boats along except the wind at that time. There was not in Portsmouth Mary, or in fact any of the CT boats, had nothing in the way of propulsion. It was all sail. And that fishing went on until about, well, sometimes to the end of September. And we have had many a time had a very hard sail to get back home from Shetland at the beginning of October. Of course, we weren't always the latest that, but that's the latest ever I'd be, starting about the beginning of October to come home from Shetland in small boats which were only about 50 feet long and about 15 feet beam.
What course did they come round then?
Well, they went up round the west coast of Scotland through the Sounds and round Cape Wrath. Round Cape Wrath. Oh yes, past Cape Wrath, and from there made a course for the northwest point of Orkney, or if otherwise went through some of the Sounds in the Orkney Islands and went up the east coast of Orkney, and from there they took a course for past the Fair Isle and on to Sombra Head, and from that until Lerwick, which the distance would be pretty near between 450 to 500 miles. Of course, there was lots of harbours we could shelter in. We went all the time at sea, mind you. Well, that's the way that the thing generally worked.
But there was no harbours on the west coast of Scotland that you could get in the night in the dark.
Oh no, you always had to watch. You always
watch
had to
that
watch
you weren't caught out if the weather was anywhere bad. Yes.
Well, you'd get a hectic passage going on.
Oh yes, we've had many hard passages. Yes, hard passages. I remember coming home on one occasion, and when we got down as far south as Belfast Loch, we had only one whole sail in the boat.
Aye.
Yes. The rest of them were all torn, but we managed to scramble into Carrickfergus, and we had to go to Belfast and carry one sail to, at least we had to go to Belfast, carry a sail up there and get it mended to take us home to Port Mary.
Aye.
Yes. Now, I suppose that you'll be interested to know that there was quite a lot of superstition among the fishermen.
Oh yes.
There was. There's no doubt about that. Some of them were very superstitious, and others, of course, I don't know whether they believed in the thing or not, but the most of them went through the process. They got what they called the herb, which was supposed to be something to bring luck. And this herb was produced or gathered by a woman in my time in Lambton called Mrs. Killier, who was a daughter, I think, of Nan Weed, Nan Weed was supposed to be a great witch doctor.
That's right.
And what was done with the herb was this. There was a man sent to Sampton to get the herb. To gather these herbs, it wasn't one herb, but it was the herb. That was the name the thing was called. Well, the man would go there, collect the stuff, and come back, and of course there would be nothing done to it until you would arrive at the fishing ground. So, but before commencing fishing, the herb would be boiled, and each one, the liquid that was boiled in would be put into a mug, and each one would have to take a mouthful of this.
Aye.
The remainder of the liquid would be thrown on the nets, and what was left of the herbs, the so-called herbs, was tied in a piece of sacking, and that would be tied onto the end of the nets.
Aye.
And they had to be very careful that no other boat or no other person would get a hold of this, because when you finished hauling the train in, this thing was usually hid that it wouldn't be seen, so that no one could pinch the look off you.
Aye.
But in some cases this was being done, because I heard of one case where the cook went aboard one of the other boats along with the cook of that boat. It don't do to mention names, of course.
No.
And when he was coming away, the dishcloth was hanging on the rigging to dry. So he pinched the dishcloth. and he came aboard. He didn't say anything to anyone. The next, that was at the weekend. Well, then on the Monday they went out to sea, and this happened in Crookhaven. They went off to sea, and he got a good shot. And in the morning, after they were called, they were setting the mast, and the boy was usually helping the skipper at the after end for the lift of the mast, for to pull it up on the tackle. And he said to the skipper, "I knew we would get a good shot tonight, skipper." "How did they know it?" he said. "Well," he said, "I pinched the dishcloth from such a boat. For goodness sake," he says, "don't let that man know that they've done that, or he killed him." Another case I know of where a man was picked out just before they were ready to sail for Crookhaven. This man belonged to Sampson, and he was picked out from the crew to go to get to Mrs. Killier to get the herb. He was given half a crown to give to Mrs. Killier and a train fare and nothing for himself. So he took the train to Sampson Station, and when he got off there, instead of going to look for Mrs. Killier, he went to the Brown Cow. He spent the half crown, and after the half crown was spent, he came out, and he thought to himself, "Well, I'll have to bring something back." He jumped over a hedge, and he gathered some stuff out of the corner of a field, wrapped it in a piece of newspaper, and came back to Port St. Mary. And of course, this was on the day before he was sailing. The skipper says to him, "Well, how did they get on?" "All right," he said. Where's the gramercy?" "Oh," he said, "it's there down there." "Well, give us it," he said, "and I'll keep it away." So this was taken, put away in the skipper's custody until they got to Heaven. And the process that I described was gone through. It was boiled, and each one had to drink it, and the rest was put silk on the nets and all the rest of it. And everything went swimming. Of course, it did as well as the real thing. Well, sometime after that, under a matter of fact, years after that, this same boat was in Shetland, and I was there in another boat. And we were hauling off from the stage one day, that is the stage crew had been lying over the weekend. We'd been in nearly a week with bad weather. We got out on the Thursday. And we fouled this other boat. We had the pass round him. Oh, its anchor chain was underneath his bottom. And we had to pass round his stern for to get the anchor clear, or the chain clear of it. So as we were pushing around this fellow's stern, I said to one of the crew, "We've got a rope off you anyway, Bob." "Yes, by," he said. And that was all there was thought about it. We went to sea on the Thursday night, shot that night, but nothing. And let the boat drift about all day on the Friday, and shot again that Friday night. And we weren't very long shot until we noticed that the boys were beginning to get very deep in the water. And we decided that we started to see what was on, and pulled up to the nets and found that we were almost full of heaven. So we had to start as soon as possible, as soon as we could get steam up for the haul. And we carried on hauling and hauling, and it took a long time because it was what they call a foul haul. The things didn't come very well, and there was such a weight of heaven in that it wasn't very easy to get on with. But however, it took us about 12 hours to haul. We put in 93 crams. I think it was 93 and a half crams, if I can remember rightly. And we had to cut 6 nets away. We couldn't carry all. Well, we got into Lerwick the next day, which was on a Saturday, got the fish out late at night and washed the nets, and everybody was tired because we'd been trialing all from the 9 o'clock the night before. And we turned into bed about 3 o'clock in the Sunday morning. not thinking about anything. Well, things went on as usual through the day, and the following week we went on fishing again as usual. But on the Saturday, I, along with some others, went for a walk into the town, and we were standing or sitting on a railing when the skipper of this boat that I've spoken of came past, and instead of greeting us with a name, he says, "Hello, Rube." So no one paid any attention to this at the time, but it rather struck me. So I said, after he had passed, I said, "What did he say?" He said, "Rub," something about rub. Oh, I said, that was for me, because I said when we passed his boat such a time, I said, "We've got a rub off you." Well, that passed off all right, but I wasn't satisfied. I wanted to make sure that this was meant for me. But I got a hold of the cook of the boat, and I said to him, "Was there anything said in your cabin about what I said the day we were foul with you such a day?" "Yes," he said, "quite a lot. And they said they all say that you've got our luck."
Aye.
Well, that passed off all right. Well, years after that again, when the First World War broke out, I was in Port St. Mary knocking about after I'd come home from a steamer, and this man was short a hand, and he asked me to see would I go with them for a few days, or as long as I liked. So I said yes, and I was well do that and do nothing. I went and got me gear and came aboard, and we went to sea. It was on a Tuesday. Nothing happened on the Tuesday night. We didn't get very much. We went out again on the Wednesday and shot on the Wednesday night. We were shot somewhere about 4 or 5 miles off the Chickens. So it was a lovely fine morning. We were hauling about 4 o'clock the next morning. Because you always left the nets until daylight to haul in the Helen, but the mackerel nets was hauled at 12 o'clock. It took you see, it was practically working in the night. You see the difference? Well, about 4 o'clock in the morning, it was a lovely morning. The sun got up, and it was one of these days it was worth to be alive. And I knew what would annoy the skipper. He was there fiddling about it. And I said to one of the crew who was beside me, "Is there any rats in this boat?" And he looked at me, he said, "Shut him out." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I never seen any luck yet where them things was mentioned," he said. I said, "What things?" "That's what I've just mentioned," he said. But I said, "Rats and mice and cats and dogs and such things, priests and parsons and things," I said. "Oh dear, dear, dear," he said, "we can go and lay the boat up." "We can go and lay the boat up," he said. "I never heard the like," he said. "Oh, that's something dreadful," he said. That's the finish of it," he said. Well, we didn't get very much that day, but we went out the next night and we got a nice shot, and there wasn't a word about it then. But he had it always in his head that I had put the bad luck on him by what I had said. Now, can you relate any experiences?
Superstitious?
As far as superstitions?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
When I started, I was 12 and 9 months when I went cook first. And when we were getting the boat ready for the mackerel fishing in Port St. Mary, among other jobs that I had to do was to clean out the skipper's bunk, for to get it dry, for to put his bedclothes and stuff in. So, in the process of getting ready for this washout, I came fouling a bit of paper the size of my 2 fingers, wrapped up in paper, and I wondered what it was. It was up on a little bit of a shelf. So I took it down and I unravelled it, and I thought it was a rabbit's leg it was. So I didn't know what the meaning of it, and I wrapped it up in the paper again and put it back where it was kept. And I said to the skipper sometime afterwards, "What's that rabbit's leg that was in your bunk when I come following it when I was getting it cleaned out? You don't find that?" he said. "Yes," I said. "I had to clean it out before I could wash it." He said, "That's a very lucky thing," he said. "That's the left hind leg," he said, "of a she here." "Don't tell anybody," he said, "about that." Well, no. On another occasion, with the same man, we were in Lerwick, and we were getting ready a Saturday afternoon, getting the work done, all the little jobs that we could for the following week, like. And the skipper was having a shave. Now, for to do that, he had to have the looking glass stuck up on the water gauge of the boiler. And she gave a bit of a snug to the key, some boat passed us or something, and she gave a little bit of a snug to the key, and down comes the looking glass on the boiler fire front, and it smashed in thousands of pieces. Oh, we got in the tantrums at once that we were finished, we could go home now, and we could do this, and we could do that, and we could do the other. And when he cooled off, he said, "Here's a shilling," he said, "go and buy a looking glass," he said, "and don't say a word about it." Well, I went and done the message, fetched the new looking glass down. I got one as near the size and colour as the other one was as it could be. So I fetched it down, and there wasn't a word spoken about the looking glass. He never took any notice to it because it was practically the same. So the following week we got as much herring as we could handle. And I said to the skipper when he was doing the same thing the following Saturday, I says, let's break the nonsense. I said, we are lucky this week. Just for fun, I said it. And he says, only for that, he said, we'd have had twice as much. And we couldn't, if we would have got twice as much, we couldn't have handled them. Yes. Yes.
Well, now about the ports and the people that were employed in connection with the fishing, I suppose that it would be worth recording some of these things.
Oh yes.
In Port St. Mary, there was 2 net factories in my time, and in our time, and there was 3 blacksmiths in addition to the 2 blacksmiths that were the smiths that were looking after these factories, making iron work for the boats. There was 2 sail lofts, and they would be employing up to 4 and 5 men on some of them at some time, although there wasn't, things was cooling off in my day. But before that there was as many as 4 men in each of these sail lofts, stitching away all the time to make sails for the boat.
Making and repairing.
Yes, and of course nearly every second man you met at the old school was carpenter, and they were employed in the winter time in repairing and of course I don't remember many boats being built in Port St. Mary. I do remember 1 or 2, but that's all. But however, the most of the building was done before my day.
Where were they getting all the canvas and stuff from?
All of which?
The canvas.
So the canvas was made at Moore's Mills at Tremont.
Oh.
Yes. Yes, that's where the canvas came from.
Yeah.
But so that in addition to the men that was in the boat, 6 men on a buoy in the boats. Those, of course, the boats was registered up to 121 at the CT boat.
Right.
Well, supposing there was 100 boats at once, well, that meant 600 men and 100 boys that was employed. Of course, they couldn't man the boats with men from around here. They had to get them from Scotland and Ireland, quite a number of them, for to man the boats.
Oh, coming from far deep into the country too.
Yes.
Yes, so any amount of
Some
us
of them were
coming
glad
from
to take
Lanark.
anything at all. Anything, any man at all, even if he was a farm labourer. I heard of a case of an old Lancashire man who had been a soldier, and he was taken in one of the boats, and they were off somewhere off the Fastnet one fine day, dodging about waiting for shooting time. So they come fouling some what they call sign birds, you know, tiddywicks or different things, stormy petrels or anything of that sort. That were signs that there was fish about. So the skipper said to the men, they were all sitting there, the skipper said, what do you say, men, will we have a shot here? The Lancashire man said, I don't mind, he said, I were a good shot when I were in the army. Yes. Well,
Was there much difference between the wages of a boy and
the boy got a half share. Got a half share. And if he was a boy that had been 2 or 3 years at 2 or 3 seasons at the fishing, he got perhaps a 3/4 share. That is if he was a smart boy. But his share was supposed to be the half share.
deal about done this one?
Is it? Well, that's not too bad at all.
Not too bad at all, that's very good, that.
Well, that's about all that we could really say about the fishing anyway, isn't it?
Well, I don't know, we could talk about it for weeks.
Yes, it's like yes.
Yes.
Well, how long are we going to go?